for Life and Money Matters with the Success Guys, Mike Hill and Renee Guerra. Changing lives one day and $1 at a time.
Good afternoon, KBEC listeners. We have a very special guest today. This is Jim Phillips, live in studio with Renee Guerra. And Renee, I'm going to let you introduce our special guest today.
Oh, I'm so excited. This is a day that I've been waiting for a long time. Well, we have our very special guest. It's Jack Canfield. He's the beloved originator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series, which grew into a billion-dollar market. As the driving force behind the development and delivery of 125 million books sold through the Chicken Soup for the Souls franchise, Jack Canfield is uniquely qualified to talk about success. He is affectionately known as the number one success coach, or America's number one success coach. Jack has studied and reported on what makes successful people different. He knows what motivates them and drives them and inspires them. Jack holds the Guinness World Book of Record for having 7 books simultaneously on the New York Times bestseller list. His most recent national bestseller, The Success Principles and How to Get from where you are to where you want to be, the new standard in self-improvement contains 64 powerful principles for success utilized by top achievers from all walks of life and areas of commerce. And Jack was also featured in the movie The Secret, which is also a huge hit with audiences. He's also been a featured guest on 1,000 radio and television programs in nearly every major market. And his new book, titled The Golden Motorcycle Gang, co-written with William Goldstone, is available, which we'll talk about later in the show. And as a BTS graduate and being involved in train-the-trainer program currently with Jack, it is my pleasure to introduce Jack Canfield to our listeners. Welcome aboard, Jack.
My pleasure, Renee. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Jack, we understand you're in Santa Barbara, California today. Fantastic, and we thank you for joining us here. Renee gave me a bunch of questions I'm supposed to ask you, but first off, I've got to ask one basic one.
Sure.
How many Chicken of the Soup books are there?
Well, we've done 100, we're up to 215 Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and we just found out because we got the figures from China that sold 350 million books in the last 2 years just in China. So we're up to 500 million books sold. It's quite extraordinary. It surpasses anything we ever thought when we started the series.
That's mind-boggling, quite frankly, to think that many books have been sold. What do you attribute it to?
I think 2 things. I think the stories appeal to universal concerns of people, being parents, being students, love, overcoming obstacles, dealing with disease and frustration, and dealing with grief and death and dying and cancer. We really tried to address all the basic issues of people. And then the other thing I think the success is attributable to is that the books have stories in them. There's about 101 stories in every book. And I think the longest story we ever did was 5 pages, so most of them are 2 or 3. So you can sit there, read one story, get an insight, an aha, an epiphany, or goosebumps, or you get moved emotionally and inspired or motivated. And so you can put the book down and come back to it the next day. So it doesn't require you to stay up all night reading it.
Sure. That makes perfect sense, and it sounds like a good analogy to help through with life. I understand you've got 3 reasons that people don't achieve goals. Can you kind of give me an insight in terms of why you think people in today's crazy world and society are short on goal setting and making it happen?
Well, I'd be glad to. Let's just list them first, then we can unpack them one at a time. The first is that most people don't even set goals. We've had research that only 10% of people in North America actually sit down at the beginning of the year and set measurable, specific goals that they want to achieve. The second is they lack daily disciplines to achieve those goals, and we'll talk about those. And the third is they have subconscious fears and limiting beliefs that are below the threshold of awareness that are stopping them. So it creates an inner conflict between what they say they want and what they actually do. So if we go back to the first one, we're not taught in school. Think about this. When you went to school and I went to school, no one taught us about how to set goals. So literally, we don't learn how to do it. And they need to be specific and measurable, like how much by when. I want to lose weight is not a goal. It's an intention, it's a hope, it's a wish, it's a dream. But I will weigh 125 pounds or less by March 15th, 2013. That's a goal. So we have to teach ourselves how to do that. The second thing is that people lack what we call daily disciplines. And there are many disciplines of success that we have to learn. One is what I call the hour of power. I recommend that everybody exercise for 20 minutes a day. We now know that if you exercise for 140 minutes a week aerobically, you're less likely to get Alzheimer's, you're less likely to have heart disease, you have more energy, you have more focus. If you do get sick, you get better quicker. Just 20 minutes a day puts you in the top 1/25th of 1% of fitness in America. Most people are not doing that.
Emphasis on the word physical exercise there, too.
Physical exercise, yes. And then the second thing in the Hour Power is 20 minutes of reading. So we read things that uplift, inspire, and inform us to become more effective in the world. And the third is to spend 20 minutes meditating, doing affirmations, and visualizing. Most of us have not learned how to do that. Our schools don't teach us. Unless we take a course, we don't learn. But we know the effects of meditation and affirmations and visualization, and we can talk about this more in depth later. What it does is it actually accelerates your success, sometimes 2 and 3 times faster than if you weren't doing that. So that's one discipline. And then there's something we call the Rule of 5. So let's say you have a goal to, be a best-selling author, like I am, for example. So I'll take that as an example because I know that world really well. Then I need to do 5 things a day, every day, 6 days a week. You can take one day off, like Sunday or Saturday. And every day, I do 5 specific action steps that gets me toward my goal. Most people don't do that. And then the last thing is that we have something called the 30-day principle that people do not understand. If you're going to change a habit, we all talk about habits of success. It's the daily disciplines of every day, every day, every day. If I write 5 pages a day, at the end of the year, I've written 1,500 pages. That's a best-selling book. That's a novel. That could be anything you want. If I'm a basketball player and I shoot from 5 spots on the floor every day for 10 minutes and just, perfect that shot, I'm going to become one of the best basketball players in the world. But you must do it for 30 days in a row. That creates new neural pathways in the brain that allows the brain to change its behavior. NASA, which is, located in Texas, they discovered when they were working with astronauts that it takes 25 to 30 days to create new neural pathways in the brain. They did a major experiment I won't go into, it's a little time-consuming, but most people, when they start to do a new habit, whether it's exercise, making calls, calling back clients as soon as they get a call, eating better, whatever, they don't sustain it for 30 days in a row. And if you miss one day in the middle of that 30-day period, it's like you're back to square one. So these are some of the things that stop people from being successful. It's the ignorance of how it all works.
Well, I found it amazing when you just stated the statistic right up front that only 10% of those people set goals. And one of the things I've kind of prided myself, not that I'm to brag on Jim Phillips, but the whole idea of measurable goals, for me, is the foundation. Mm-hmm. You've got to know when you set that goal, so many people can set the ambiguous one. Oh, like you mentioned it earlier, I want to lose weight. Well, do you want to lose 5 pounds? Do you want to lose 50 pounds? You want to end up at whatever. And I love the way you restated that goal. It was, this is where I want to be to the positive, to the affirmative on a specific date. And I think that is just very enlightening to look at it.
Because what happens is the subconscious mind wants to have you be successful, but it doesn't know exactly what you want. People in my seminars will say, I want to have more money. So I'll go up and I'll give them $1. I say, well, you now have more money. You happy? They go, no. They go, why not? Well, I wanted more than that. Well, how would anyone know? So do you want to double your income? Even that doesn't work because we don't know what your income is. So you have to say to your subconscious mind, which basically is like a GPS system in your car, we're putting in an address that you want to arrive at in the future called double my income. Well, what is that? If you're making $70,000 a year, then I would say I will earn $140,000 annual income by March 23rd, 2013. Now my unconscious mind knows that it has to figure out how to do that, just like the GPS system in your car figures out the route to get you from Waxahachie to Dallas. You don't have to know. You just have to put in the destination, and the car will say, turn left here, turn right there. Your subconscious mind will figure out how to do it. It will know what to read. It will start seeing things in the environment that can support it. It will seek out people, etc., when you're not even aware of it. But you have to put in the destination. Without that, all of these wonderful brain power you have doesn't work.
Hey, Jack, too, that's one of the things I've learned in Jack's teachings that going through Breakthrough Success and Train the Trainer is that once you start, and I know Jack would mention this, is that once you start taking action, things start showing up all the how. So really, you don't want to just not stop taking any action either and start putting those action in places or any goals. So in other words, if you write that goal and I want to double my income, I've seen how that's worked in my life. It's just drastically changed my life since I started working with Jack a couple of years ago in 2010. So I'd enjoy that.
Tell me a little bit about the subconscious thing. Can we go into that a little more in terms of how you motivate it and kind of kick it into high gear?
Yes, exactly. This is the thing that, again, we're not taught this in school. Your mind is made up of about 15% conscious, meaning you know what your name is, you know where you are. If I ask you your telephone number, you can tell me. But the 85% of your mind is your subconscious or unconscious mind, which is operating right now, making you breathe, suggesting your food. It's, if you go to lift your arm up, it does all the little movements, it knows what to do. But more importantly, what's in there are all your memories of your past. And it's trying to protect you from negative things that happened in the past, and it's trying to help you get toward the goals that you have. Now, sometimes those things are in conflict. Like maybe you need to give a speech in order to enroll people in your vision, but when you were in the 5th grade, you tripped on the stairs when you were going up to give a speech on the stage, and your subconscious mind said, when the kids laughed at you, we'll never let that happen again. And so it's kept you and made you afraid to give speeches. So we have to reprogram this unconscious mind. Because think about this. If I've got 15 horses pulling in one direction and 85 horses pulling in the other direction, the 85 horses are always going to win. So basically, we have to learn how to reprogram the subconscious mind the same way we would reprogram a computer if we wanted a different result to come out. So basically, you do that in 2 ways. You do it through the use of affirmations, which we'll talk about, and you do it through the use of imagery. So basically, what we know about goal setting is that if I have a goal to weigh let's say my goal is 185 pounds by July 1st, then I'm going to have an affirmation. I'm joyfully and happily celebrating weighing 185 pounds. And I would say that, then I would close my eyes, and I would see an image of myself in the mirror weighing 185 pounds. Or I would be looking down at the scale, and it would be reading 185 pounds.
The before and after picture, in other words.
Yes. We just want the after picture. The before picture is already in your head. You know what that looks like.
Makes sense.
So the other thing you have to do, and this is the piece that most people miss, you have to have a positive feeling that you would already have if you weighed 185 pounds. So you have to create a positive feeling of gratitude, joy, gratefulness, whatever it might be that you would feel.
The Whistles walking down the Santa Monica Pier.
Exactly. If I was walking down the Santa Monica Pier and it was a sunny day, I would have this sense of, I'm free, it's relaxing, I'm happy, I'm on vacation. I would create that feeling right now while I visualize that picture. What that does, that's how you put the direction into the GPS system in your subconscious mind. This is why we talk about the term visionaries. We say that Walt Disney was a visionary. He could envision Disneyland and Disney World before it was ever built. Michael Dell, the guy that runs Microsoft, whose name I can't think right, Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, sure.
Steve Jobs was a visionary. They could see these things before they happened. Mandela, Mother Teresa, John F. Kennedy. We're going to put a man on the moon. Now, there's a very interesting experiment that I just learned about last week that teaches us something really important. The Institute of Heart Math, which studies the relationship between the mind and the heart, they did an experiment where they took people that were, normal people, and they had test tubes with strands of DNA from human bodies in these test tubes. And DNA is like a shoelace. At the end of a shoelace, you have that little plastic part that keeps the cloth from unraveling. In your body, you have something called a telomere. It does that. When that begins to fray, you age. So what they can do, they can take DNA, and through the power of thought, you can actually unwind the DNA, because the DNA is in a helix spiral, or you can wind it up again just simply through thought. They wanted to see how powerful thought could be. And this is where we got a major breakthrough in neuroscience. The first experiment was they just intended for the DNA to unwind. They just sat there and said, we want this DNA to unwind. They thought about it, visualized it, etc. Nothing happened. They then had the second time they had them just feel good feelings while they looked at the DNA. Nothing happened. Then they had them do an experiment where they intended to have the DNA unwind, and they had them feeling gratitude that the experiment had worked. And guess what happened? The DNA unwinded. 25% of that strand unwound. So what they determined is that when you're intending a result, a goal, you want to be a millionaire, you want to lose weight, you want to have a best-selling book, you want your kids to grow up healthy, whatever it is, You must visualize it and see it and intend it, think about it, and you have to have a positive feeling while you're doing that and during the rest of the day. This is why the biggest advancement in success now is called state management. You have to manage your emotional state and keep yourself happy, positive, loving, grateful, no resentment, no guilt, no fear.
That's amazing stuff, I tell you. You know, I recently read a book called Blink, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this book.
I am.
He talks about all of these things and from a psychological standpoint, and how police officers and these individuals that are put in different harm's way and all of those things are able to overcome tremendous amounts of fear and anxiety or whatever through being able to control that subconscious. And now they actually figure it out neurologically. That's pretty amazing stuff.
It is amazing stuff.
Definitely. Jack, we're going to have to take a break here in about 3 minutes, and I know we didn't have a chance before we went on the air to kind of give you the headline of where we're going, but at the 20 and the 40, we're going to end up taking about a 2-minute break, so I just wanted to give you a heads up there.
That's fine.
Wanted you to kind of hit on the whole process of setting the goal and what needs to go there and where do our listeners need to start the process.
Well, you first have to create a vision of what you want your ideal life to look like. Do you want to have a big house? Do you want to live near the ocean? Do you want to have a small house in the woods where no one can bother you? In my book, The Success Principles, which I highly recommend everybody get, not because I need the money, I don't, but because the book is so valuable, is we go through 7 areas of your life: finances, job and career, relationships, fun and recreation, physical fitness and health, what we call personal, which are the things you want to own, the things you want to do, and finally philanthropy, or making a difference in the world. So you look at each of those areas of your life and say, if I could have a magic wand and just go, boom, and a genie would grant me my wish, what would each of those areas of my life look like? How many vacation days would I take? What would my body look like? Would I be able to run a marathon, or would I be an Olympic athlete? Whatever it might be. And once you've decided that, then you go back and you turn each of those into a measurable goal. Like, I will complete a 10K run by June 30th, 2012 at 5 p.m. I will finish the New York Marathon, in 4 hours and 25 minutes by, April 1st, 2013. So you get very, very specific. And then when you've got that, you write all those down. And then after the break, we can talk about how you turn those into affirmations and how you use visualization to actually log those into the subconscious so it starts coming up with solutions, keeps you motivated, and actually changes your ability to perceive reality so that everything becomes a support to you rather than an obstacle.
Oh, that's fantastic. Awesome. We're going to take a break here, KBEC listeners, but please stay with us. We've got Jack Canfield, the world-renowned author and amazing to me. The man sold over 1 billion books out here, gang. This guy knows what he's talking about. We will be back in a minute. Welcome back to Life and Money Matters with Renee Guerra and Jim Phillips. We have a very special guest in studio today, or actually via the phone, Jack Canfield in Santa Barbara, California. And Renee, I think you had a question you were going to lead Jack into from here.
Well, Jack, I think one of the questions I had for you was about the breakthrough goal. You recommend making a breakthrough goal, and why would you? Tell us a little bit about the breakthrough goal, and why is it so important?
Well, what I learned from my mentor, W. Clement Stone, who I worked with when I was in my 20s, and he was worth $600 million back then in the 1960s, so he'd be a billionaire by today's standards, said every year you want to create a breakthrough goal, something that would literally quantum leap your life, your career, your company, your profession. So for me, it was to create a best-selling book. So the first Chicken Soup book took me from making $1,000 a day as a consultant to being able to charge $30,000 a day as a consultant. And it made me an international celebrity. It's allowed me to travel around the world. For someone else, having your own radio show would be a breakthrough goal. Having a syndicated column. We had a chiropractor who lived in Dallas, who took one of my seminars, and his breakthrough goal was to get his own 5 minutes on drive time radio on the #1 Dallas radio show. Everyone would learn his name, and he would just do talks about nutrition and holistic health and that kind of stuff. And within a year, he doubled his practice because when people needed a chiropractor, his name was top of mind. Opening up China as a market would be a breakthrough goal for somebody. Learning to speak Spanish, if you live in Texas, would give you an opening to a whole other market in terms of being able to communicate, sell, whatever. Getting an MBA degree, getting Apple or Google or Microsoft as a client, creating an iPhone app, getting on what used to be Oprah, now, or I used to get on Larry King, the Today Show. All those kind of things would be something that would take you. I use a football metaphor. You don't want to go 4 yards, 4 yards, 4 yards, you get a first down. You could do that all the way down the field. That's a hard way to play. If you can come out like Peyton Manning and throw a 60-yard pass play, that's a breakthrough down the field. So you want to think, in 1 year, what could I accomplish that would quantum leap me, and not just little incremental steps to success, but make a major breakthrough to success? So basically, when I ask people in my workshops to do that, they come up with some astounding things, like some of the things we just mentioned, and then they go out and do that. Like one of my clients named Peggy Cappy. She thought, she's a yoga teacher. Now, you don't think yoga teachers can make that much money. She was making about $50,000 a year. And her goal was to make her yearly income her monthly income. She wanted to make $500,000 a year. So what she did was she said, how could a yoga teacher possibly do that? Well, what happened is she created a yoga show on PBS television. And they use it as a pledge drive special. So, when you write in, you give them $50 and they send you Peggy Cappy's yoga tape. Well, she was so successful at that, and they give you 50% of the profit you share with the local PBS station. She made over $500,000 the next year.
Wow, that's fantastic. I want to just kind of tease our listeners here a little bit too, because we're going to talk about another book that you wrote called The Golden Motorcycle Gang. And most of what you've talked about so far have been financial goals or goals that are going to increase your income or things of that nature. Right. And I understand this book is kind of the one that gave you a new look on life and said, it's more than just the money side of it. It may be how you improve life, how you improve the outlook on the future and where you're going to go in more of a spiritual context. So I'd like to get into that the second or the last break. But let's talk about affirmation a little bit.
Sure. Once I have a goal, what I want to do is I want to program my subconscious mind, as we talked about earlier, to achieve that goal. And there are two ways to do that. We call it releasing the brakes. Like right now, if you were driving your car and you had the emergency brake on, you wouldn't just push harder on the gas to overcome the emergency brake. What you would do is you'd release the brake, and with no extra effort, the car would go faster. So we want to release the negative beliefs, the fears, the doubts that are stopping us from being successful. And one of the ways we can do that is by using affirmations and visualization. So an affirmation is simply a statement of you having already achieved your goal. So I am joyfully, standing in front of my new clinic that's opening. I am happily driving my new Porsche Carrera down Pacific Coast Highway. I am joyfully sitting on the beach in Ka'anapali Bay with my wife in Hawaii on our vacation. So you state it as if it's already happening. Then what you do is you close your eyes and you visualize being in Hawaii or driving your Porsche Carrera down the road. Now what happens is your brain goes, wait a second, dummy, we're sitting in Texas. We're not in Hawaii. And so you go, I know that, but we're going to keep visualizing being in Hawaii. What your brain does in order to create the resolution, so it doesn't have to be in the state of, wait a second, we're not there, we're here, it has to get you to Hawaii. What most people do with their dreams is they give up the dream, and then you don't have that, what we call psychological dissonance or structural dissonance in your head. So we want to purposely create this tension in the brain, so the brain then goes, okay, I get it, I have to figure out how to get him to Hawaii or figure out how to get in that car. So that's why we do this work. And then what happens is after that, you'll start waking up in the morning and you'll have a creative idea. You'll see an article in a magazine about buying used Porsches. All kinds of things will start to show up in your life that your brain is now able to see and think of creative ideas and feel motivated to take action in ways that it was not before. Like right now, you're sitting in the studio and your listeners are wherever they are. And you're not aware of what you're feeling in your right foot. But as soon as I say right foot, you're aware of it. Because it was coming up your spine, into your brain, it was being filtered out. Most of the solutions to our goals, and those things that would help us achieve them, are actually available to us in our subconscious mind and out in the world. But we're filtering them out through this part of the brain that was filtering out what you were feeling in your right foot. What opens up that filter are goals and beliefs and needs. So when I need a bathroom, I start noticing restroom signs. I see gas stations on the side of the road if I'm driving, etc. If I'm hungry, I'm noticing Domino's Pizza and Pizza Hut and, Wendy's and so forth. So basically, this creates a pathway between the subconscious mind and the conscious mind, so we now get solutions. Then you have to take action.
How do you move your mind past the Neapoli coast and Princeville and the whole Kauai thing, though, when that was just an early memory in life, and you go, oh, this is something that I've always wanted to do, and you kind of stay focused on that and never move on?
Yeah, well, basically what happens is you've got to take action. Once you start getting ideas or inspirations or epiphanies or breakthrough ideas, whatever it might be. So the whole thing's a system that goes from intention and, I have a vision, I set goals, I do my affirmations, I visualize. Now I start to get inspirations to take action. I must act. And then I must respond to the feedback. Not all my actions work. I can open a store, nobody comes. I ask for feedback. I don't like where you're located. It's not a safe location. I didn't know you existed. There's no advertising. So then I respond to the feedback, keep correcting, and then I persevere until I get the result. Most people give up way too soon. Chicken Soup for the Soul was rejected by 144 publishers over the course.
Wow.
Yes.
If we had given up after 100, I wouldn't be on this show today talking with you. So most people give up on their dreams. Dreams take the time. Most of them don't just happen overnight. If success was easy and simple, we'd all be thin, wealthy, and have beautiful spouses. But the point is, it takes a little more effort than most people are willing to give it, a little more perseverance and focus.
Boy, I like the whole concept of affirmation, too, though. It visualizes the goal for me. And I got to tell you, my daughter is very close to my heart. And when you mentioned the Neapoli coast, my wife and I had a wonderful experience there 26 years ago. And my daughter's now 25 years. So we'll just leave it at that.
All right. Well,
it's a great place. And it really is. And I like the idea of visualizing the goal, bringing that goal into a tangible, physical sense so that it brings life to it. Very strong information there.
Yeah, and the other thing you can do, you can create what we call a vision board, where you would cut pictures of the coast of Hawaii out and put it on your vision board. You might have a picture of a Aloha Airlines plane taking you there. You might have a word that says Hawaii vacation. So that every day you're walking by this vision board, or you can purposely sit in front of it for a few minutes and just let that stream into your subconscious mind. It's like living next to a car dealership and you see your favorite car every day when you walk out. Eventually you're going to have that car because it's just in your face all the time. So we want to purposely do what advertisers do, which is repetition, repetition, repetition.
And you recommend, Jack, that listeners do that morning and night, or how many times a day? Just like as far as repetition, what's the best time?
Research says when you first wake up, because your brain waves are what we call alpha state. They're in that kind of very relaxed state. And right before you go to bed, as you're kind of drifting off to sleep, that's the second best time to do it. You're programming your mind all night long to be thinking about this topic. So first thing in the morning and last thing at night before you go to bed.
So it's not a good thing to be watching the nightly news unless you get hooked up at that.
Exactly. Most people spend the last half hour before they go to bed either watching the news or watching some kind of action show where people are killing each other, and the news is all negative. We see the same news every night. There was a fire here, someone killed somebody there, there's a war going on here, there was a rape there, etc. And that's what you're going to bed thinking about unconsciously rather than your vision and your goals.
I read an interesting article about people that went to sleep right after the monologue of Letterman or Leno or any of the nighttime guys, and supposedly when they woke up in the morning they were like 85% more happy than the people that had gone to sleep right after the
humor
news.
Humor is very, very powerful. I mean, the only thing I listen to on XM radio is the 4 comedy stations and music, never the news.
KBEC 1390 AM. Look it up on Sirius Radio. You'll love it. I'm sorry. That's our plug for us.
There you go.
No, one of the things we try to pride ourselves in, quite frankly, is we want to be a positive influence to listeners and make people understand that if you hear the negativity day in and day out about how terrible the world is, then it focuses and just drives you into the oblivion or whatever. So we're all about positive here and trying to build that.
Two things happen when you get negative news. One is it makes people think the world's a negative place and scary, and so people are less likely to go out and take risks. The second thing it does is it actually programs you to create more negativity. Whatever you focus on, talk about, think about, and feel strongly about, you're going to bring about more of. So basically, we want to be focusing on our vision and our goals rather than on what's wrong with the world. Most people spend their time sitting around talking about how bad it is. Right now we're talking about all the political candidates and whether we like Mitt Romney or Santorum or Gingrich or Ron Paul or whatever. And it's all negative news, negative ads, negative this, negative that. And, we're not talking about the world we want to create. We're not talking about our visions, our love, our goals, our joy, our families. We're focused on what's wrong with the world rather than what's right. And research shows that you get more of what you focus on. So basically, we have to buck the trend of the media, which basically focuses on, news that's kind of extreme and gets an automobile crash, the looky-loos want to see. But basically what happens when you get an automobile crash, more and more people start banging into each other because they're not paying attention to driving.
Sure, more rubberneckers. Many politicians ever show up in your seminars?
I've had a couple. And they've changed the way they've done their politics. They've stopped doing negative campaigns, much more positive. I've had a couple not national senators, but senators in the state assembly, Congress, that kind of thing.
Fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome.
Renee, you got a question that you want to lead Jack into?
I do have a question for him. I know Jack went through the coaching program through your Jack Canfield coaching. I know it's done for me. I mean, it's tremendously changed my life. Why do you recommend that people work with coaches?
Well, I think several things happen when you work with a coach. Number one, a coach will help you clarify your vision, your mission, your purpose, your values, and your goals. Most people, if you say, what's your life purpose, they don't even know what you're talking about. If you say, what's your vision of your ideal life, very few people can answer. Only 3 to 10% can tell you what their goals are for the year. So a coach will help you clarify that. And as one of my mentors said, clarity is power. If you don't have goals, you'll get used and you'll work for people who do. So you want to get very clear about what you want to create in your life. The coach can help you do that. Second, a coach can help you see what you don't see that's stopping you from being successful. It might be the beliefs you have or the fears you have or the lack of awareness you have of some of the basic principles that they've spent their life studying that you never learned. And the third thing, and I think the most important thing, is they hold you accountable to stay in action, doing the things you need to do to be successful. So if you were my coach, and I told you I was going to do these 5 things in this next week to move toward my goal, I don't want to have to get on the phone a week later and tell you I didn't do them. So when you don't have a coach, there's no one to hold you accountable. And today, so many people are what we call solo entrepreneurs. They're a coach, a massage therapist, a speaker, a trainer, an internet marketing consultant, and so they don't have a boss. And without a coach, you can get very lax and you get into bad habits that only a coach can see. If you're a golfer and you're always holding the club wrong, you may not see that, but a golf pro will. So the same thing's true in coaching for your life as a parent, as a professional, an athlete, whatever it might be.
Well, the largest corporations in America today still have a board of directors, and those board of directors still give us the CEO that overall. There is no such thing in life anymore as a true entrepreneur. We all report and have to have somebody out there to help us or hold us accountable,
It's very important to have a coach. Tiger Woods, for example, he has 5 coaches. He has a nutrition coach. He has a long game off the tee coach. He has a short game coach, a putting coach, a mental coach. You got to have coaches that can help you perfect parts of yourself, because once we graduate high school or college, most people don't engage in much education anymore, and so we don't improve. But a coach, taking seminars, reading books, listening to radio shows like yours, these are all things you can do on a regular basis to keep yourself moving forward.
How often do you recommend that you have that interaction with the coach?
It depends on what you're trying to accomplish. I think for a coach you're paying money to, once a week is plenty. But we also have something called accountability partners, where, let's say you and I were accountability partners. We would call each other every morning, maybe at 7:30, and we'd spend 5 minutes on the phone, and I'd tell you the 5 things I was going to focus on today to move me toward my goals. You would tell me what your 5 are. We get on the phone again the next day. Did you do it? And then what are you planning to do today? Knowing that I have to report into you tomorrow, I'm much more likely to do it. So for an accountability partner, which I think everybody should have, just find someone who's as dedicated to success as you are and make that agreement. And in my book, I have a chapter called Mastermind Your Way to Success that teaches you how to use an accountability partner. And then do that 5 days a week, and then see your coach every week, or every other week could also work.
And you can also get his book at www.jackcanfield.com and look that up on the Success Principles, or look it up on his website. It's a great book.
Well, you got me thinking I got to get an accountability coach, because one of the things when I bought this radio station, and our listeners have heard this before, 7 months ago, I went through the whole process of re-engineering my life and trying to figure out what it is I wanted in life and where I wanted to go. And corporate America had basically created a burnout for me after 5.5 million miles in American Airlines and all the rest of that good stuff. And I surrounded myself with like-minded people, but I have not done that daily accountability, and that's pretty powerful. I'm going to take you up on that one. Thank you for that.
Well, I will tell you that when I do I used to do a thing called a mastermind group where we'd meet 4 times a year for 2 days with me. Cost $15,000. They had 25 people in it. And at the end of the year, everyone would tell me the 2 most powerful things they got out of the year was their accountability partner relationship every day, 5 days a week, and their mastermind group, which would meet every 2 weeks. That would be 6 people that would get on the phone. They could do it in person, but these were people from all over the country, and they would meet for an hour, and everyone would get 10 minutes to focus on their goals and get feedback from the group and ideas and books they should read and so on and so forth. Those 2 things will keep you in motion. Otherwise, we say an object in motion will tend to stay in motion until gravity and friction takes over. But if we want to be, if a person in motion stays in motion when they have a coach, a mastermind partner, and an accountability partner in a mastermind group. So those are 3 relationships that are worth their weight in gold.
Fantastic. We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back with Jack Canfield, the author of Renee?
Chicken Soup for the Soul series and the Success Principles.
Oh, we're back on a beautiful day in downtown Waxahachie, Texas, Ellis County, Johnson, and Kaufman County. I can only hope that you folks have taken the time out of your beautiful and glorious day to tune in to KBEC Radio today and join us with Jack Canfield, the world-renowned author and motivational speaker and gentleman who I personally, in the last 40 minutes, have felt like he's taken my life to a new level and made me do a little bit of work. I got to go out and find a new affirmation friend and somebody that's going to sit down with me and make me accountable, and my accountability coach. I got to find a good person to make those things part of my everyday life. Renee,
I was going to say, Jim, I could call you every day. We'll set that up.
7:30 in the morning.
Sure, we can
I got news for you. You got a problem though. I'm here at 6:15, so I'm already kicking it in there. So. Let's move on here a little bit, Jack. One of the things that Renee and I were going over early on was this whole goal-setting thing, and what is the most important thing that you've seen in the successful people that you deal with day in and day out, what they do to keep themselves on track to making their goals a part of their everyday life?
Well, we've actually talked about a couple of them. One is having an accountability partner that you check in with every day, having a mastermind group that you check in with every 2 weeks, and then a coach. The third thing, I think, would be this rule of 5 idea, where every day you take your breakthrough goal, your number 1 goal, whatever that is, whether it's to lose weight, whether it's to find your soulmate, whether it's to double your business or start a business or leave corporate America and become a consultant, whatever it might be that you want to do, that's your number 1 goal. Every morning, take out a 3x5 card and just write down on the left-hand column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then ask yourself, what are 5 specific action steps I can take today that will move me toward the completion of that goal? And then work through them all day long. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If you do that every day, you will keep moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. When we did our Chicken Soup for the Soul book, the first one, every day we would call 5 radio stations and see if we could get interviews. We would call 5 churches and see if we could go and replace the minister that Sunday, and instead of them doing a sermon, we would read spiritually oriented Chicken Soup for the Soul stories and build a sermon around that, and then sell our books in the back of the church or out in the parking lot afterwards. But 5 specific action steps every day. The other thing I found is that they've learned how to overcome fear. Fear is the number one thing that stops people from moving forward. Fear of rejection, fear of looking foolish, fear of losing money if they make a bad investment, etc.
Can you emphasize that one more time? Because we did our first show when we started this was all based off of this concept of fear. Mm-hmm. And how do you get over it? How do you kickstart the thing?
There are 3 major ways to get over fear. One is to just simply do the thing you're afraid of. Now, that's the hardest way to go. But, we do that. Sometimes we're afraid to go out and do something, but we have to, so we do it. The job interview, reading the sermon, from the Bible at church, whatever it might be, but we do it. And if you do it enough, you overcome the fear because you realize nothing bad happened. So that's one way. That's the hardest way. Fear is created by having a picture in your mind of something bad happening. Like a lot of people right now are afraid they're going to lose their home, afraid they're not going to be able to pay their mortgage, afraid, that they're going to lose their whole life savings, whatever. That's you in the present moment in a house that you're living in, imagining in your mind a picture down the road of you being out on the curb with your furniture. So basically what happens is we can change the picture from one of a negative outcome to one of a positive outcome. This is where affirmations and visualizations replace the unconscious talking to yourself and the unconscious pictures you're holding of you being in a bad situation. When you see a snake by the side of the road, or let's say you're walking through the woods, you see a snake, that picture isn't what scares you. It's the image of the snake biting you in the next 4 minutes that scares you. So basically we can have stop creating the negative images. But here's the most powerful way. There's been a new technique created called tapping. And we found that there's a meridian, like acupuncture meridians that run through the body, connected to the kidney. And when you tap on these 7 points while you think about your fear, it actually disappears your fear. It's like putting a virus into a computer program. And we're actually doing a free webinar. It's on, you can go to tappingintoultimatesuccess.com. That's tappingintoultimate, ULTIMATE, success.com. And you can sign up for this free seminar, which is happening Monday. It'll be 10 o'clock to 1 o'clock Central Time, 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock Pacific Time, and it's free. And we're going to do 3 hours of teaching people how to use tapping to overcome any fear, to reprogram any limiting belief. And literally, we do something called a 5-minute phobia cure, where we've cured people of phobias of heights, snakes, water, airplanes, whatever it might be, in 5 minutes or less. People that have stage fright, they can't go up and sing or speak, we'll get them up on stage, do the 5-minute phobia cure, and 5 minutes later they're playing the guitar and singing like they never had a fear in their life.
Boy, I need that for claustrophobia.
Yeah.
No, be pretty powerful. Hey, let's move on here, and we've got about 10 minutes to go. Tell me about the Golden Motorcycle Gang. I read the review on this, and I'll be very candid with you. I've not had a chance to read the book, but from what I read on the review, this is really more of a spiritual aspect of where you can go in setting goals. Is that correct?
Yes. Basically, most of us set goals for ourselves. Like I want to do this, I want to do that, or I want my family to be able to do this. This book is more about setting goals for the world at large. How can we have a world of peace, a world of abundance, socially just, where we don't have things like Trayvon Williams being, killed, perhaps we think unnecessarily down in Florida last week. We're actually in February, but now we're seeing it all over the news. Mm-hmm. How do we create a world that's ecologically sustainable, where we don't kill ourselves with pesticides and chemicals and all of our genetically modified foods and so forth?
Where we figure out the 6 billion people that are on this planet got to find a way to make it sustainable.
And make it work for all of us,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Basically, what happened for me, the title of this book, The Golden Motorcycle Gang, came from when I was in graduate school. We were asked to go back. I was studying education, how to become a teacher. I started as a high school teacher. How to go back and remember the time you decided to become a teacher. For most people, it was while they were an undergraduate in college, or maybe it was their 5th grade teacher inspired them. They wanted to grow up and be like her. I went back in this little visualization we were doing with our professor, and I popped out before I was born. And there was a bunch of people floating through space like spirits, souls. We were looking down on Earth during World War II. I was born in 1944. And my dad was actually living in Fort Worth, Texas. He was in the Air Force training pilots. And I had this sensation that I was supposed to go down and help out and create a world where people wouldn't blow each other up. And I asked all these people that were with me, these souls with me, would you go down with me? And most of them said yes. And I called it the Golden Motorcycle Gang because it was like we were just a group of people flying through space like on Harley Davidsons, like on vacation, kind of irreverent, having fun people. And so as I started to get older, in my 30s and 40s, I would meet people and I would feel this tremendous synchronicity with them. And I realized these were people that were part of my Golden Motorcycle Gang, people that had chosen to come down to Earth, to be born, if you will. And there's actually research now that shows people do choose to be born, that we can do hypnotic age regression, hypnotize people to go back in time and space before you were born, and people will recall under hypnosis choosing what sex to be, choosing what race to be, choosing whether or not they would have any handicaps, choosing their parents. We often say, well, I wouldn't have chosen alcoholic parents. Well, maybe you did because there was a lesson you needed to learn or some skills or talents you needed to develop that never would have come forward if you hadn't gone through that experience. But anyway, what this book is about is taking my life as an example of someone who woke up spiritually and said, okay, my life is to be a life of service to help people manifest their highest vision and live their dreams. And we've been talking about that as individuals up until now, but now we're talking about it as humanity. And we're moving into this year of 2012 where everybody's saying, okay, the Mayan calendar says, the world ends on December 21st, 2012. What people that are spiritually awake are saying, no, it doesn't end. It's the end of an age. It's the end of competition and greed and destruction of the planet and killing each other and moving into a place of greater harmony, greater freedom. We see the Arab Spring where all these people are rising up in the Middle East against dictatorships. We see people coming together to save the environment. We see people coming together to create community in a way that we've never done before, to take care of each other better. So I believe that we're going into a transitional stage, and the real question is not what happens on December 21st, but what happens on December 22nd, which is the beginning of this new period in history. And we actually have an organization called Birth 2012. You can go to birth2012.com and you can find out all the celebrations that are going on, all the organizations that are committed to supporting and facilitating this kind of a transition, what we call conscious evolution, where instead of evolution by chance, it's now evolution by choice, where we can choose to create a future that works for all of us.
Can I throw out a very basic element of that?
Sure.
And this is one of the things that Jim Phillips, as a limited mind in a limited world, has thought about long and hard. The most fundamental thing that we as human beings have to do on this earth is develop a sense of common communication. A language and a way of being able to communicate with each other that we understand through communication, whatever it may be, verbal, language, thought process, whatever, that is common among all of us. And unfortunately, we don't have that in the world, One thing, you look at people and we don't have a commonality in the most basic of things. And communication is kind of what I've wrapped myself around and said that's got to take place,
Well, communication is critical because without communication we can't develop understanding. Without understanding we can't develop compassion. Without compassion we're doomed.
Exactly. So I've broken it down all the way to that most basic element. Sure. And I call it the language of human beings. It doesn't have to be Chinese, English, French, Spanish. I really don't care. It's got to be the communication of humans.
Well, there is a language called Esperanto. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
It's been an attempt to create an international language. It kind of takes from different languages, Spanish, English, and others. And so there are a lot of kids in school now in California. Many kids are studying this as their language.
Oh, fantastic.
And so that we can begin to talk to people across all cultures. But also what's happening now with the computer, and I have on my iPhone actually a language translator. Someone can speak into it in Russian, and then it'll speak to me in English.
Yeah, I've seen those. And I think that's at the foundation. If we can at least create commonality and communication, then hopefully, and I'm a believer that the world needs to set those goals. goals. I'll give you an example of what I would consider to be a world goal. The whole world needs to come together and figure out how we're going to explore this thing called outer space. And it shouldn't be about the money. It shouldn't be about sending a Russian person to Mars and a U.S. person to wherever. The world needs to come together and say, okay, how are we going to sustain and find life in all of these other cosmos? And how are we going to send individuals, human beings as we know them, to these cosmos so that we can ensure that, we've got a life up until the who knows wherever. But that's neither here nor there. Jack, I can't tell you how enjoying this conversation has been, and our listeners, I hope, have really gained a whole lot of insight to it. Renee?
Oh, me too. I think one quick thing on when our listeners buy your book, Jack, on the Golden Motorcycle Game, what would you recommend, or what's your hope to get them to do?
What I'd like them to do is discover their own life purpose. To get really clear, I believe that every person is like a cell in the body. We need heart cells and lung cells and eyeball cells and toenail cells and all the cells. Then the body works perfectly. We need mechanics. We need engineers. We need artists. We need singers. We need people running radio stations. If everyone would do the thing that is their passion, which is built into them, and you know that because you feel joy when you're doing it, then the whole world would work. But we all got talked out of that in school, and we were talked into learning things we didn't really care about. And right now what we're seeing is each person has to tune inside, get in touch with what their purpose is. And I have a technique for doing that in my book, The Success Principles. It's also on goldenmotorcycle.com. There's a form you can fill out that clarifies your life purpose. If everyone would become aware of their purpose and then live that purpose, then we'll create this golden age that we're all talking about.
Hey, thank you, Jack. With that, I've got to wrap this up. I really do appreciate it. I want to say thank you to Renee and thank you to Jack Canfield for being part of KBEC and Life and Money Matters. With that,
you've been listening to Life and Money Matters with the Success Guys on 1390 KBEC. Mike Hill is a registered representative of and securities offered through Berthel Fisher and Company Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Hill & Associates Wealth Management Advisors is independent of BFCFS. The interpretations and organizations of these ideas are the confidential thoughts of Mike Hill and do not represent the opinions of Berthel Fisher and Company Financial Services.